Once more, we are going to take a look at one of the communities in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania, as Slick and Shiny Tongue-in-Cheek Productions puts together a little video of things about Norvelt, Pennsylvania. And what I want to say about Norvelt is something that I usually don't talk about. I try to avoid talking about politics in these things because it just doesn't help. It just often creates bad feelings, and I don't want to do that. But when you're dealing with the beginnings, the origin of Norvelt, you really have to talk about politics, because if it weren't for matters political, Norvelt would never have existed. Norvelt came about in the middle of, maybe I shouldn't say the middle, but as the Great Depression in the 1930s was moving along and really doing serious damage to the country financially. And the president of the country was a Republican, Herbert Hoover, and he had a sense of taking care of his people. It looked very much like his people were the people who were in charge, the people with money, the big people. And what most of us think of as the people didn't seem to matter to him a whole lot. He really didn't want to do much to help people, because he had this idea that if you helped people, it made them weak. But what he didn't seem to notice was there were people who were weak because they didn't have enough to eat. They were hungry. They couldn't get work. They had lost their jobs because of things shutting down. They didn't have the money to feed themselves and their family. Herbert Hoover actually vetoed legislation that came through the Congress that was going to provide food for people, and he didn't think this was a good idea, so he vetoed it. And so when it came time for elections in 1932, the people remembered that Herbert Hoover simply looked the other way when they needed help, and they elected a Democrat, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt began his presidency in 1933. And what we should do here is move on a bit. New Deal Subsistence Homestead. Now what I'm going to do is put this on, I'll say a few things by way of introduction, and after I've done that, then we'll go back and look at these pictures one by one, and I'll comment on them. What the project was: subsistence homesteads for people throughout the country during Franklin Delano Roosevelt's administration. About 100 of these were built in places where there was a great need. And there was a great need where Norvelt was, because in the previous 3 years, about 12 mines had shut down in Mount Pleasant Township. Mount Pleasant Township was what was surrounded Norvelt. And Roosevelt, in his prior job as governor of New York State, he had got together some people whom he considered a brain trust, people who had some brains and had studied matters financial, economical, and political, and tried to figure out what was going on and why things were so bad. And I don't want to pretend that there was just one cause for the Great Depression. Anything that was as large and far sweeping as the Great Depression was something that had a number of causes. But one cause that they settled on was the promotion of the idea of competition as opposed to cooperation. So in this new project that the Roosevelt administration wanted to bring about to give some living quarters to people who had been put out of work was fostering the idea of cooperation. I mean, they interviewed about 1,800 families. They weren't interviewing individuals. They wanted families to populate this new town that they were building. A new town to hopefully give a place to live that people no longer had a place to live or no longer had work to do. It was also set up to give people jobs. You know, the work of building the town itself, building the houses, doing landscaping, building roads. And what they bought for this was not just the area for the town, but the area surrounding the town, which would include farms, farming land. There could be cooperative organizations of, people to take care of the poultry farm, the beef farm, the hog farm, the dairy farm. There was a lot of stuff that they set up. Now, what I want to do is shut down, and we're going to move to other things. This is the way it began. In 1934, the first full year of the Roosevelt administration, when they first started to build Norvelt. This is what things looked like. There wasn't anything there other than some farmhouses. This was one of the farmhouses that was around. They started to, teach these guys, people who were going to be part of this thing, how to work to build things that would be part of the new town, like cupboards and shutters and doors, door frames, window frames, things like this. This was a house that was there previously, and they used this as the construction office and the place where the administration was hanging out. And it's now a funeral home in Norvelt. This is Greensburg here in Westmoreland County. Here's Norvelt down here. We're just getting a look at the way things are put together. On the map, Greensburg up here, Norvelt down here. I like maps. There's something about me that likes to see visual presentations that help me understand things. This is Greensburg, South Greensburg, Skidmore Road coming out, Brinkerton Road coming down, and you take a cross road over here and it'll come down, bring you down to Norvelt. This is Norvelt over here. Now here's the way it was laid out. It was laid out by a guy from Greensburg named Paul Bartholomew. And it was laid out on about a half of the 1,500 acres that they bought for the project. This was 700 and some acres. And the other 700 and some acres were for the farm work. This is the middle of it, okay? 13-acre plot in the middle. And right here was the trade center. We'll see that. And it was a place where people could work and do necessary things, necessary for a community, like, a snack shop and a general store. Upstairs were places for doctors, nurse, and administration. This is what we were looking at. Next week over here, we're going to see the school. A 20-room schoolhouse was built so that they would have education for not just grade school, but high school. Look at the school. This is what we were looking at right in the middle. This was a 13-acre plot where the communal project surrounding it was all these smaller plots for the the places where people could live. They were not small. They were around, from 1.5 acres up to about 7 acres, depending on which plot you'd got. We'll take a look at one of them. This is a 3.5 acre plot. And you could see that they made it so you could do not just living there, but you could do subsistence farming, which meant you weren't doing farming to sell the stuff, but you were doing farming to live off of. See, there's an orchard and there's places to plant all your vegetables. And if you had a cow or other animals, you could pasture them over here. Westmoreland homesteads. That's what it was first called. It wasn't first called Norvelt. It was first called Norvelt Westmoreland homesteads, recalling the fact that they were going to be these subsistence homesteads. And in 1937, they decided that they wanted to change the name. And they changed the name to honor Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor, that part of her name. Roosevelt, that part of her name. Norvelt, that's where the name Norvelt came from. Eleanor Roosevelt, because they had a great respect for the woman. She was one of those people in politics who actually gave part of herself. It's very unusual to see a person with a political bent, which she did have. She was married to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. She was a distant relative of his, and she was a Roosevelt before they got married. But when she was involved in a project like this, she would sometimes, when the government funding wasn't sufficient, she would give money of her own. I mean, the Roosevelts were not poor people, and she had money to contribute to, the going forward of this project. This is where they were meeting. This was the thing for the kids, the nursery school. This shows a picture of the one of the houses inside, showing the kitchen, and downstairs we'll get a picture of the kitchen. Very much from the 30s. That looks like my grandmother O'Hara's refrigerator, which was no doubt from the 30s. This is the upstairs. Here's the bedroom. These are the kind of houses that they built for the people. And the people could buy these. They were set up so that you could get a loan. And it was a cooperative community, which meant if you had a job working in the community, in one of the community projects, you got paid for several days, and for the rest of the days, you got equity on your home. You had parts of your loan forgiven for the time you spent working on community projects. This is what it looked like when it was first being built. You can see a mine over here right beside Norvelt. I mean, it was right in the middle of about 12 mines that had shut down. There were a lot of people out of work. And this shows how they were laying it out. They were not doing it on a grid plan. They wanted to do it to correspond with the topography there. This was done by a guy from Greensburg, one of the local architects. He put this together. This is one of the houses. And you can see they were just starting to plant trees. And as time went on, those trees grew up. This is pretty much now. It was also surrounded by farms. There were farms around there. And the project involved a dairy farm, a beef farm, a hog farm, a poultry farm. And this was all around the place. The people there had an opportunity to work on these community projects, and they got paid for several days working. And then the rest of the days, they got money that would go toward paying off their loan. This is the poultry farm. When anyone got a house, they also got between 30 and 50 chicks, little ones, that they could raise and be part of the, the agricultural thing there. This is the actual poultry farm where it started out there. It was one of the largest poultry businesses in Pennsylvania at one time. And whenever you got a house with a garage and what I would call a chicken coop, but they called them poultry houses, a bit more high-tone sounding maybe. here's what you got: a house, a garage, and your chicken coop or poultry house, depending on what you want to, however you want to say it. That's Mary Wolk's grape arbor. That's Mary Wolk sitting there. See, the grape arbor was part of the project to help you to grow your own food. You could grow grapes and eat them, or ferment them and do whatever you want. This is part of the dairy farm, which produced dairy products. This is the fire company. They had a fire company which every year put together a fire company fair, which was good to bring people together. The whole ethic of the place was cooperation, trying to get people together to do things in a community sense. That was the fire, the firehouse garage. Another project that they wanted to put together was have a project, have a factory where people could work there. And they got together a garment factory where people could work. And that shows people from the community from Norvelt who worked there. This was during the Second World War. Now, I think we've gone far enough at this point. We might have a second one. And I'm going to push a button and that'll shut it down, and we'll see you for number 2. Bye now.